characteristics, cash, and I keep forgetting the last C. Remember that last C, guys? Anyways, the characteristics is the key. Because credit and collateral is no problem. That's the stuff you'll learn throughout your careers in life on establishing your credit readiness to the industry. Your collateral will be whatever project you're putting together. But it's your characteristic is the key that is the one that's going to help you get that extra 10% push from that lender or the lender's committee. Why I say characteristics, I mentioned many times earlier, network with your industry friends. One of these days, you guys would be the one running a department in one of these banks or an agency that oversees for the project. And that's why once in a while when I'm asked to speak here, I do this because, believe me, for the last 4 years we've been in different course classes. I now meet the same students in the same field I'm in, but on, let's say, if they work for ANZ Bank, and I run to them and, oh, this is where you are. Yeah, I'm an underwriter now. I go, perfect, you know, so now they're learning stuff, so when I submit my stuff, I have, even though we have a wide gap of age, but I kind of keep the rapport, the key is relationship and just keep in touch. Anything else I'm supposed to do?
Does anybody have any questions so far?
So I'm just giving you a little, I don't have a speech as I said right here, but I'm just giving you a little chronology of the events and where I'm at today. Good.
So after bringing Western Union to Guam and having all that experience in the business and in the industry, after you took the courses, did you feel all the little pieces tying together and you understood maybe some things you could have done or you could relate it to the experiences you had before?
Well, that's a good question. Because when I broke Western Union, remember my first year of college in California was just your basic undergraduate courses. It's not your upper level courses for finance, marketing, or economics. So when I first broke Western Union, I had to do things what I thought was the right way without a basic structure. So when I did these things, I've learned from the hard way through my 15 years of ownership of Western Union. There's times where I had some issues with revenue tax because I didn't file in a timely manner, or my reports are not done correctly, right? Then I had to learn from them what I had to do. But all those little stumbling blocks or penalties I shouldn't have to pay, I shouldn't pay it if I would have known what I could have done. But after that event happened, after, like I told you, after I sold the company and decided to go back to college, I went back to school, that's when I knew that financing was what I wanted to do. And going through the financing, and just like you guys, you got all the prerequisites, what you got to go through, the little basic stuff before you get to your course. When I was going through that at an older age, I understood now what those basic requirements and those courses applied to towards the experience I went through. And I just want to share one story. When I first went to college after high school, I remember sitting at one of our classes in California, and there was quite a few of the older population that always comes back to school, and you probably see that in some of your classes here. And I said, and I was always wondering why they always scored a very high GPA. You know, I never understood. I said, we're young, we just got to high school, we're supposed to be a little bit more brighter, but they scored a lot higher. Well, when that came to me 10 years later, and I went back to school in 2000, I was sitting amongst peers 10 years younger than me that time, with the 10-year gap. But when we had class projects like this, I understood now what real-life experiences is applicable to your either case studies or essays or projects in class. So when I applied those real-life experiences into the class, I was those guys earning a 4.0 now. I wasn't a 4.0 student when I started after high school, but as I went back at an older age, I just applied the real-life situation. The reason I'm sharing this with you is you don't have to wait 10 years. I said it many times in the last few minutes, networking. Depending on your profession, there's always those organizations out there. If you want to be an accountant, there's the Accountant Association of Guam. You know, even though you're a young, aspiring accountant, join those senior groups Because when you meet with them at their functions or their presentations, you get to understand their logic, their acronyms, their discussion. What does it mean with all these debits and credits and all these low current event situation about our cash flow, why are we running short? I mean, you hear current events. So when you're up to tune in current events and you go back to the class stuff and you get to see the dynamics and how it's supposed to integrate. They mesh so perfectly. I could say this because my education career was the reverse. I thought I was going to be your typical right after high school went to college, which every parent wants that to happen. But I was so entrepreneur driven, I only took a 1-year span in college and went into the business. But I went back to school because I figured that was an important part to understand what I thought and what I needed to further my career in financing. So yes, it is important to. I did see the difference when I came back, and if I would have done Western Union once more, I wouldn't have sold it. I would have had structured it correctly, because I'm assuming, like I learned in college now, you guys learn how. I think if it's either marketing class or is it marketing or business, one of the business courses. You guys done a business plan yet already? You know, when you guys create a project, whatever it is, you're going to do your market study or your target audience and all that. Well, those are good tools to keep as your reference, because later in life those stuff do apply. When you decide if that is the route you want to take to open your business, you do need a business plan. But the good news that you have today now is the SBDC to help polish up your plans or to guide you in the right way, at least on your market, your financial pro forma, and your cash requirements you need to start the business. Anything else?
When you were starting with Western Union, sorry, did you have, like, you were 18 when you started starting Western Union here. Did you have like an advisor or a colleague, friend who, you know, was knowledgeable in this type of business? So was it just you alone who?
That's another good question. In those days, I did everything based on gut feeling. Because I was the guy who was receiving funds through the post office. And when I hung out with my other classmates that were from Guam and I was in California, they said, yeah, we're all receiving ours through the post office. I wish we could get a lot faster, because, you know, in those days it's called 15-minute transfer. So no, I didn't have a structured advisor. I had this entrepreneurial drive, and so what I did was I went to Los Angeles headquarters. I met with them and I said, I'm a classic example of your commercials that you're portraying, where people get stranded or people needs this for school. That's who I am. And we're from the furthest U.S. territory called Guam, or U.S. territory, and there's no Western Union there. And the first thing they said is, do you want to open one? I said, yes. So I did that. I signed an exclusive agreement to represent them in this part of the region. And when I came here, that's when I learned the hard way. I did not know you need to figure out how much funds you need to pay for your 2 months advance in your rent for your location, how much money you need for renovating to make the storefront have to look like the other Westerns in the state, and how much money you need to pay for at least 6 months of operation to pay for your staff, because money don't come in that quick. You know, so and I didn't have, if I would have done this through a business plan model today, with what I would have learned in school, I would have known the financial impact. And maybe that's why that's a pivotal point in my life. Maybe if I did that financial model at age 18, I knew I didn't have the cash flow, so I would have probably stayed in school. But guess what? If I stayed in school, yes, I would probably got my degree, but I wouldn't have the 10 years worth of forced experience, because I ended up staying back in Guam. And then when I went back to school, it just, because I wasn't, you know, when I went to school out of high school, I'm not your typical 4.0 average student. I was your A, B, and C person. I'm embarrassed to say I was, once in a while I get some C's, because I wasn't motivated too much. I was entrepreneur driven. That's the difference. So of course my parents were upset when I quit school. But later in life, to fulfill one of my parents' dream, I went back to school. And that's what I'm sharing, because education does play a major role. I know at this point in your junior, senior year, even if you graduate, you're still going to be at the entry level to your career. But take advantage of networking. Go out, meet. If it's marketing, join the marketing association, the GHRA, join them, because those are the guys in the industry. You get to know what current events is the Guam market still growing? Is it stabilizing? Who's our new market? Is it in today's paper? Is it Russia? What's Russia's market impact in Guam? Understand all those dynamics. Because when you understand those real dynamics, just networking these guys, when you're here still in your last year of college, and you share that within your understanding of certain marketing or human resources type stuff, and in regards to the jobs and the structure of the corporate structure of the different levels of corporate management to middle management to the working industry. Once you understand those dynamics, and when you look at the book stuff, this is what they mean. I used to hate to read chapters, but when it comes just a headline, I go, oh, that's the theory behind it. So when it comes to tests after my 10-year experience, I used to just write essays, and I always seem to pass because the essays match what that theory is all about, because I went through that exercise. I don't know if that makes sense. Anybody else?
So you did the PMBA program?
Yes.
What was your cohort?
We're the first.
We're the first one. Oh, wow.
We're the first.
I know 9's coming around the corner.
Yeah, the 9th course. That's how long ago.
Yeah. There's 9 cycles since then.
And so it was amazing, because in my PMBA course, I was still entrepreneur driven. I wanted to go into the housing business. It was actually me talking to my banking cohorts there about this housing project idea I got in mind. And it's been in the books in the United States since 1986, but Guam has not yet implemented these type of developments. So through my banking friends that's been in the industry that long, I presented to them during my class project. But it was just very difficult to understand, but I've learned it, I made it a class project, and today I built with that same project that I use in my PMBA within my friends that's in the financing side. I built almost 500 homes today using that program since I got out of the court in 2005, so that's 6 years. So, and that 500 homes equates to almost $140 million of real estate investments. Who knew, who thought I would ever have done that? But I remember in my undergraduate degrees here, when we're doing business plans for tourism and all that, sometimes I wonder if we're doing it and then someone borrows our plan and does good with it. But those plans work. I mean, I used it, I applied it in one of our classes, I took it with me, I use it in the real life situation. Today, I've so far, knock on wood, the only developer in Guam that's creating affordable housing, because everybody else is creating the higher end communities, 300, 400,000 homes. I'm going after certain targeted income families. Now, why did I choose that target income families? Well, like I said, prior to college time, I was in Western Union. I guess I didn't clarify this. While I was in Western Union, I was also a realtor. I was working for somebody, and I was working for bigger developers while I was going to, after I started Western, I was going to school. I worked for a realtor. Just like everybody else would go get a job, I worked for a realtor, and as I was selling homes through the firm I used to work for called Pacific Brokerage, for every 10 families I submitted, I had 7 families that were denied to the bank. So I knew there was a niche market, that there got to be something for these 7 families. Why are they always falling off the gap? So just like the same exercise you do in school, you do your research. Technology, we had internet technology when I started in 05, 06, but way back, we didn't have internet. We had to go through the whole old method where you pull the tab from your library and try to find the book that you want to look, right? But the internet makes things a lot easier for you guys, because and I don't think you guys can cite